They buried the girl alive. That's how the story always begins, but it's not the part they want you to remember. It was winter, 1782, and the earth was too hard to dig, so they used a cellar, a shallow one, meant for potatoes and salted meat. The child was 9, but in her eyes lived a knowing that made grown men turn away. Her name was never recorded, but in the records of a monastery buried deep in the Bavarian Alps, she's called the Hollow One. She spoke 5 languages she'd never been taught. She recited prayers from cultures long extinct, and she knew secrets about the clergy, about the blood rituals performed beneath the sanctuaries, about what truly happened during the Black Plague. They said she was possessed, but others, those who watched from the shadows, said she was something else. A remnant. A vessel for memories too dangerous to be kept in the minds of ordinary people. They entombed her beneath stone and scripture, hoping the cold would silence her tongue. But it didn't. And what she revealed before the final stone was laid would fracture the order from within. This is not folklore. This is not entertainment. This is forbidden history. And once you hear it, you will never unhear it. So I warn you, if you're looking for comfort, click away. But if you're ready to see what has been hidden in plain sight, stay with me, because this is just the beginning. What follows isn't a tale, it's a reckoning. They say knowledge is power, but they don't tell you what that power costs. In 1804, a young seminary student named Elias Grange stumbled across an iron-bound ledger hidden behind the altar of a crumbling abbey in southern France. The abbey itself was abandoned, its walls blackened with fire, its records erased from every known ecclesiastical archive. What Elias found in that book wasn't scripture, it was a record, a catalogue of children born with unacceptable insight. They were labeled under a single Latin phrase, Veritas Hostium, the enemy of truth. Each entry contained a name, a date of birth, and a final word, either converted, cleansed, or vanished. Some had marginal notes in red ink, predictive dreams, recalls past executions, or most disturbing, identified false priest by smell. Elias, in his youthful arrogance, thought he could expose this. He sent copies to the archdiocese. He waited. 3 nights later the monks came, but not from any known monastery. No seals, no names, just shaven heads and pale eyes. Elias was never seen again, but his roommate, a boy named Thomas, found a single page pinned to his door. It was a drawing, crude, frantic. It showed the abbey on fire, and a girl standing in the flames, untouched, her eyes black as ink. This was the second time the Hollow One had appeared. 2 continents, 2 centuries apart. Same face, same age, same look of knowing. Either she never died, or something that wore her face never left. And we are still being watched. In 1939, under the rising shadow of war, a British intelligence officer named Merrick Halcombe was assigned to a classified operation titled Project Oracle. Officially, it was a code-breaking unit. Unofficially, it was something else entirely. Halcombe was tasked with investigating individuals across Europe who claimed to receive premonitions, visions of attacks, names of spies, even entire battle strategies. He expected madness. What he found was far worse. In Warsaw, he interviewed a girl named Ania, who drew maps of military bases she had never seen. In Prague, a boy who spoke in voices that didn't belong to him. But it was in Austria where Halcombe encountered the one he would never forget, a young girl, orphaned by bombing raids, taken in by nuns. She called herself Alina, but Merrick recognized her face from a charcoal sketch hidden in the War Office, a sketch labeled Subject Theta, the Hollow One. She hadn't aged. Her eyes were exactly as they'd been in the 18th century German records. And she knew things, deep things, about Project Oracle, about Halcombe himself. She told him of a betrayal that would occur 3 days later, and she was right. His closest aide turned out to be a double agent. But here's what broke Halcombe. Alina whispered to him the name of his wife's lover, a secret no one else could have known. He left intelligence work soon after, but not before writing a classified memo titled Continuum Entities, Field Notes on the Recurring Girl. It was buried, until now, because fragments of that memo surfaced in 2022 on a military server leak. And once again, the Hollow One's image resurfaced. Same face, same knowing eyes, same whisper of dread that history is not what we think. It's what we've been made to forget. There are patterns, and she is the constant. In 1997, a psychiatric patient named Eliza Morel was admitted to a private clinic outside Buenos Aires. She was 10. No records of her birth. No traceable family. She had been found wandering the outskirts of a demolished Jesuit mission, barefoot and silent, her clothes torn, her skin marked with strange bruises in circular formations. Doctors diagnosed her with trauma-induced mutism, but it wasn't mutism. Not really. For on the third night of her stay she began to speak, not in Spanish, not even in Latin, but in Proto-Quechua, a language extinct for nearly 1,000 years. She whispered secrets to the night staff, predicted the heart failure of one orderly, described the private sins of another with such eerie precision that the man resigned and disappeared. The clinic's director, Dr. Fernando Rojas, recorded her sessions obsessively. In one, she told him about his childhood pet rabbit, how it didn't die of illness but was drowned by his older brother. A memory Rojas had repressed for decades. The tapes of Eliza's sessions never made it to public records, but an intern leaked one clip online in 2008. In it, Eliza, eyes closed, says a name, Alina. Then she says, "She showed me the roots beneath the chapel, where they fed it." When asked what it was, she replies, "The thing the fathers made from stolen bones. It waits." Within a week, the clinic burned to the ground. Official cause, faulty wiring. But the fire inspector's notes recovered in a foyer request mentioned something else, doors locked from the outside, no emergency exit signs, and in the ashes no trace of Eliza Morel, just a single page from an old book, charred but readable, the Latin phrase on it, Veritas Hostium, the enemy of truth. The Hollow One had returned. In 2003, a Vatican archivist named Matteo Bianchi leaked fragments of a document so old it predated the Council of Nicaea. The parchment was brittle, written in Greek and Aramaic, and stamped not with the papal seal, but with the mark of the Exiliant Brotherhood, an order erased from official church records by the year 900 AD. The text was a warning, not about heresy, not about war, but about a child. She walks unharmed in fire. She speaks in tongues not yet spoken. She recalls the shape of God before the fall. They named her Kalet Mene, the one who never unremembers. According to the document, this child appeared every few generations, always unnamed, always unchanged. Monks tasked with observing her reportedly went mad or vanished. Some drew circles on their skin. Others tried to carve open their own skulls, claiming, "She's inside and she wants out." Bianchi included an image with the document, a medieval illumination, a girl surrounded by elders. They kneel. She stands. And behind her, a wall of black wings. When asked by journalists if this could be a symbol of divinity, Bianchi simply replied, "No angel ever looks that sad." 3 months later, he was found dead in his apartment. Blunt force trauma. Official cause, burglary. But nothing was stolen. Just one book torn apart, its pages missing. A week after the funeral, an anonymous email appeared in inboxes of a dozen obscure religious scholars. It contained a scanned page, written in Bianchi's handwriting. She does not bring prophecy. She brings memory. All of it. The pain, the burning, the silence between the screams. She remembers what we agreed to forget. Attached was a grainy photo, a girl standing outside a Syrian monastery, her eyes locked with the camera. Same face, same scar, same absence of age. This is not mythology, this is not hallucination. Across centuries, continents, and collapses of empire, she walks in the background of our deepest historical wounds, a footnote that returns to become the headline. And the more we try to erase her, the clearer she becomes. Like smoke ignored until it fills the lungs. She is not coming. She never left. In 1871, deep within the tunnels beneath Paris, beyond the catacombs tourists are allowed to see, an engineer named Etienne Ravoux made a discovery that he never reported. He was mapping abandoned ossuary corridors for a planned metro expansion when his team broke into a sealed chamber. At first it looked like another bone vault, walls lined with skulls, femurs stacked with ceremonial symmetry, but the center of the room held something else. A pedestal of blackened stone, etched with symbols no one could recognize. And atop it, a wax effigy of a girl, eyes closed, hands folded. A name carved into the stone in a dozen languages, she who watches beneath. Etienne ordered his team to back away, but one worker, a Polish immigrant named Christoph, touched the effigy. His hand blistered instantly. He screamed one word before passing out, "Alina." They dragged him back to the surface and he never spoke again. Within days he was dead. Suicide, they said, but his widow claimed he spent the final night carving strange symbols into the walls of their home. The city sealed the tunnel, the records were buried, but decades later in 1924, during a brief excavation, the room was uncovered again. Empty, no effigy, no pedestal, just a phrase smeared on the stone wall in tar, "She has risen." That same week, reports surfaced of a girl wandering Montmartre barefoot, dressed in rags, speaking in forgotten dialects. Witnesses said she had dark eyes, a narrow face, and a scar beneath her left eye. The hollow one, again, always barefoot, always just beyond reach. When urban explorer Genevieve Marchand posted footage from that same tunnel on a livestream in 2017, her audio cut out just as she turned a corner. Viewers claimed they saw a shadow moving independently behind her. Her last words, "She remembers everything." Then static. Her body was never recovered, but her camera was, and on the footage, just before it cuts, the same face appears, not an illusion, not a trick, just a child, watching, as if waiting. The hollow one doesn't just appear in history, she appears at the fractures, the places where memory collapses, where trauma rewrites truth, and she stands there untouched, bearing witness to the damage done. She is not part of the timeline, she is the thing it hides. In 2003, a Vatican archivist named Matteo Bianchi leaked fragments of a document so old it predated the Council of Nicaea. The parchment was brittle, written in Greek and Aramaic, and stamped not with the papal seal, but with the mark of the Exiliant Brotherhood, an order erased from official church records by the year 900 AD. The text was a warning, not about heresy, not about war, but about a child. She walks unharmed in fire. She speaks in tongues not yet spoken. She recalls the shape of God before the fall. They named her Kalet Mene, the one who never unremembers. According to the document, this child appeared every few generations, always unnamed, always unchanged. Monks tasked with observing her reportedly went mad or vanished. Some drew circles on their skin, others tried to carve open their own skulls, claiming, "She's inside and she wants out." Bianchi included an image with the document, a medieval illumination, a girl surrounded by elders. They kneel. She stands. And behind her, a wall of black wings. When asked by journalists if this could be a symbol of divinity, Bianchi simply replied, "No angel ever looks that sad." 3 months later, he was found dead in his apartment. Blunt force trauma. Official cause, burglary. But nothing was stolen. Just one book torn apart, its pages missing. A week after the funeral, an anonymous email appeared in inboxes of a dozen obscure religious scholars. It contained a scanned page, written in Bianchi's handwriting. She does not bring prophecy, she brings memory. All of it, the pain, the burning, the silence between the screams. She remembers what we agreed to forget. Attached was a grainy photo, a girl standing outside a Syrian monastery, her eyes locked with the camera. Same face, same scar, same absence of age. This is not mythology, this is not hallucination. Across centuries, continents, and collapses of empire, she walks in the background of our deepest historical wounds, a footnote that returns to become the headline. and the more we try to erase her, the clearer she becomes. Like smoke ignored until it fills the lungs. She is not coming. She never left. In 1968, during the CIA's MK Ultra hearings, most attention was focused on chemical mind control, LSD, sleep deprivation, sensory isolation. But buried in the unredacted Appendix 9 was a report labeled Subject Echo 9. It documented a failed experiment at a classified facility in upstate New York, where children, orphans, runaways, were tested for anomalous memory retention. One girl stood out. No records of her birth, no known relatives. Estimated age, 9. They called her Echo. The doctors noticed something immediately. She remembered everything, not just events she'd experienced, but events no one could explain her knowing. She recited the Gettysburg Address in Lincoln's voice. She sketched medieval battle formations without error. She named every member of a 1922 Soviet secret police unit and described their executions. One scientist laughed, calling her a genius savant, but that changed when she whispered to him, "You shouldn't have left your daughter alone last night." His daughter had drowned while he was at the facility. No one knew, not yet. He quit the next morning. Others weren't so lucky. A nurse was found scratching at her own face. A guard shot himself in the observation room. The project shut down within 17 days. But not before she said something that made them burn the entire wing. During a routine questioning, she pointed to the one-way mirror and said, "Stop hiding behind the glass. I know your name is Samuel Whitaker, and I know what you did in 1944. Whitaker was the site director. Clean record. Decorated war hero. But according to declassified Polish intelligence, he was suspected in the liquidation of a village outside Krakow. No survivors. No witnesses. Until now." Echo described everything, the uniforms, the smells, the screams, but what made the blood freeze was her final sentence, "And the twins you buried beneath the church floor, they still spell your name at night." There were no files on any twins, no evidence. But weeks later, a demolition crew renovating a burned-down chapel found 2 small skeletons beneath the altar. Both had identical skull fractures. Whitaker disappeared. Some say he changed his name. Others say he didn't run at all, that she came for him, that she comes for everyone who thinks the past is dead, because the past isn't gone. It's just watching, waiting, and she is the memory it left behind. In 1971, deep beneath the ice shelf of Greenland, a NATO expedition codenamed Operation Deepwell was tasked with installing seismic monitors to detect Soviet nuclear tests. Officially, it was a science mission. Unofficially, it had another goal: investigate a signal, one that repeated every 36 hours in a frequency no natural event should emit. The signal was human, or something like it. Just 5 syllables over and over. Kalet mene, Kalet mene. The deeper they drilled, the worse things became. Machinery failed. Batteries drained. One crewman wandered into a crevasse and was later found with frost-bitten fingers arranged in the shape of a spiral. Then they hit a chamber. Unnaturally smooth walls, embedded with symbols older than Norse runes and Mesopotamian cuneiform. Inside it, a sculpture, not of a deity, but of a child, girl-sized, eyes closed, mouth slightly open, and her hands were held out, not in prayer, but in warning. That night, all audio logs recorded screaming 27 minutes of layered voices speaking in unison. Some were speaking Latin, others in guttural languages no expert could identify, but one phrase was consistent: "She remembers what we buried." The team sealed the chamber and abandoned the site. But 2 years later, in a psychiatric hospital in Oslo, one of the surviving engineers, Hale Jensen, sketched a figure over and over in charcoal, a girl with hollow eyes and braided hair. When asked who she was, he whispered, "She spoke to me from the ice, and she knew my mother's name." By the time the drawings made it to archives, Jensen was catatonic. His final written sentence before silence: "She is not trapped below, we are." Those sketches were quietly seized by Vatican liaisons operating under diplomatic immunity. The site was reclassified as a glacial instability zone. No further expeditions permitted. But recently satellite LiDAR scans revealed a widening void beneath that very shelf. And just weeks ago, a seismic station in Iceland picked up the signal again. 5 syllables, repeated like a heartbeat from beneath the ice. Kalet Mene. Kalet Mene. She is not legend. She is architecture. She is what the world was built over, and what keeps trying to rise from beneath it. And we keep digging. In 1888, during the height of the Jack the Ripper murders, a Scotland Yard detective named Reginald Moore kept a secret journal. In public, he was a skeptic, an officer of logic, but in private he was unraveling. Moore believed the killings weren't the work of a lone man at all. He believed they were a ritual, a pattern, a calling. In his final, unpublished entry, Moore described a visit to an East End asylum where an old woman, mute for decades, suddenly began speaking after hearing of the Ripper's latest victim. Her first words were chilling. "She's watching again. The Hollow One walks in Whitechapel." Moore was shaken. She described the murder sites before they happened, down to the hour. When asked how she knew, the woman whispered, "Because she told me. In dreams. In fire. In blood." She handed Moore a crude drawing before collapsing. The image showed a girl standing beneath the lamplight. Same eyes, same scar. But behind her, shadowy figures with blades knelt, not to harm her, but in worship. Moore began tracking the dates and locations. What he discovered was horrifying. Every Ripper murder aligned with ancient feast days once associated with memory transference, rites lost before Rome. Sacrifices meant not to summon gods, but to bind memory into flesh. He proposed a theory. The Ripper wasn't killing for pleasure or even ideology. He was offering vessels, preparing hosts, and the girl, this unaging, all-knowing child, was the one being honored or released. Moore vanished a week after penning that entry. His body was never found, but in 1923 a sealed box was discovered in the rafters of his ancestral home. Inside, the journal, the drawing, and a black ribbon soaked in blood, labeled simply Veritas Hostium. Historians dismissed it as madness, but then in 2014, a team filming a docu-series on the Ripper found something unnerving. Behind a sealed brick wall in Whitechapel, a preserved shrine. Candles long extinguished, symbols etched into stone. And at the center, a portrait, faded, charred, but unmistakable. A girl, untouched by time. Eyes hollow yet burning. The past isn't buried. It's staged. And the Hollow One walks not in legend, but in alleyways, in systems, in echoes, calling out to those with ears to hear, and memories too fractured to understand. Until it's too late. In 1956, deep in the Siberian wilderness, the Soviet Union established a covert research facility known only by its code, Station Novaya 12. Officially, it was catalogued as a meteorological outpost. In truth, it was far stranger. Their mission? To study psychic phenomena among orphaned children displaced by war. The Soviets believed trauma unlocked hidden parts of the human brain, but they weren't searching for telepathy or mind-reading. They were searching for recall, not of personal memories, but of events never witnessed, civilizations never taught, deaths never experienced. Among the subjects was a girl no one remembered admitting. No paperwork, no origin. Just a name scribbled onto her intake form in trembling handwriting, Yelena. They said she never blinked, that she never ate, but her heart still beat. Guards who worked her wing reported vivid nightmares. One slit his wrists after saying, "She showed me how I died, next year." Yelena refused to speak until one cold January evening during an electrical storm she began drawing, page after page, images of burning libraries, hanging gardens with nooses among the vines, maps of continents that didn't match any Earth we know. One of the doctors, a linguist named Dr. Anton Sveshnikov, recognized the symbols in her drawings, not Cyrillic, not Roman, but Proto-Sumerian, a language dead for over 4,000 years. He asked her where she learned it. She simply said, "I remember." They kept her sedated after that, but the night Sveshnikov tried to transfer her to Moscow, the entire facility lost power. Every watch stopped. The temperature dropped by 20 degrees in under a minute. When the backup lights came on, Yelena was gone. So were 3 researchers. In her empty room, scratched into the wall with her fingernail, were the words, "I was buried once. You called me Alina. Before that I was Eliza. Before that I was fire." The facility was shut down, burned, and buried beneath permafrost. In 1992, a defector smuggled a reel of footage to the West. On it, Yelena, staring into the camera, not moving, not speaking, just watching. In the background, a voice whispers something unintelligible. When played backwards, the whisper becomes clear. She never forgets, she never forgives, and she is not alone. The Hollow One isn't just memory. She's convergence, the gathering of all that history tried to burn away, and the further we dig, the more the ground shifts beneath our feet. In 2021, a privately funded archaeological dig in the Scottish Highlands unearthed a stone crypt buried beneath layers of peat and untouched woodland. The site, believed to be a forgotten druidic ceremonial chamber, was older than Stonehenge, carbon dated to nearly 5,500 years ago. But what they found inside wasn't ancient tools or burial urns. It was a perfectly preserved coffin of blackened yew wood, sealed with iron nails etched in symbols unknown to any linguistic database. No markings of kings or gods, just one sigil carved over and over again, a hollow circle with a flame at its core. Inside the coffin lay the body of a girl, not mummified, not skeletal, but fresh. Her skin pale, her hair uncut, her eyes open, clear and unclouded. Medical teams rushed in, believing it a hoax or a planted corpse, but the forensic results silenced them. The tissue showed no signs of decay, no embalming fluids, no DNA degradation. The body was in stasis. Scientists called it a temporal paradox. Religious scholars called it blasphemy, but one of the interns, an American graduate named Leah Green, recognized the face. She'd seen it in an old Vatican photograph leaked by Matteo Bianchi, the girl outside the Syrian monastery, the one labeled Kalet Mene, the Hollow One. Leah began obsessively researching the sigils found in the tomb. Late one night, she called her supervisor in a panic. She had matched the flame encircle symbol to a tiny carving found inside a Crusader chapel in Cyprus, and in the margin of an Aztec codex supposedly destroyed by conquistadors. "It's not a culture," she whispered into the phone. "It's a code, a warning, and it's everywhere." The next day, Leah vanished. Her tent at the site had been torn apart from the inside. Her laptop was found open, a single sentence typed over and over. "She is the unbreaking cycle. She wakes when memory dies." The excavation was shut deuce. And the body taken by an unnamed governmental agency. No report published, no press coverage permitted. But here's what they couldn't erase. 2 weeks later, hikers near Inverness found strange burn patterns in the grass, circles within circles. At the center, a single black feather. She is not dead, she is waiting. And now that her story is resurfacing, so are the buried truths meant to die with her. In 1841, a prisoner named Caleb Dawn was transferred from Newgate to a remote asylum in the Orkney Islands after repeated violent outbursts and what wardens called unclassifiable speech. He claimed to hear the memory of the earth screaming through the cracks. Initially dismissed as madness, Caleb's case took a darker turn when he began carving symbols into the walls, identical to those later found in the Highland tomb unearthed in 2021. But this was nearly 2 centuries earlier. One night, a nurse named Edith Vale heard Caleb reciting a list of names in a voice not his own. Names of men who would later become prominent political figures long before their rise. Among them was a man not yet born, a future prime minister who would lead the country during its bloodiest war. Disturbed, Edith documented everything. In her final entry, she wrote, "He speaks to her, the girl in his dreams. She tells him things no man should carry. She showed him what burns under the stone chapel. She showed him the silence before the plague." Days later, Edith was found drowned in a locked water cistern. No one could explain how she got in. Caleb stopped speaking entirely. He starved himself, leaving only a single message scratched into the underside of his cot. "She remembers what you bury." That message would be forgotten until 1986, when a demolition crew found the cot in the ruins of the asylum. The carvings were preserved and analyzed, and though the institution had burned down in 1911, the symbols matched those found in ancient tombs, 20th century government files, and medieval grimoires locked in Vatican vaults. The Hollow One was never just a person. She was a fracture, a living anomaly surfacing in moments of great deception. Caleb Dawn had glimpsed her truth in dreams and went mad from the weight of it, but madness in this case might have been clarity no one else could bear. Because when memory is erased and history rewritten, something must hold the truth. She is that vessel, she carries it forward, and the more we forget, the louder she becomes, not as a voice in the past, but as a presence in the now. In 2001, a cryptologist named Dr. Helen Israel was brought in by a NATO task force to decipher a pattern found encoded in intercepted communications from multiple global conflict zones. The pattern wasn't linguistic or numeric, it was temporal. It mapped appearances, a girl's presence recorded in refugee camps, disaster zones, and war-torn villages over the last 60 years. Same height, same expression, same unwavering gaze. Locals in Kosovo called her the Watcher. In Liberia, she was called the One Who Stays. Every photograph showed her lingering just at the edge of chaos, never harmed, never aging, always watching. Helen's research uncovered something stranger. Her presence always preceded an event of memory erasure. Entire villages wiped from maps, mass graves unrecorded, censorship campaigns initiated within days. She wasn't a harbinger of death, she was a signal of deletion. Helen proposed a chilling hypothesis, that the girl wasn't a threat, but a response mechanism, a living memory safeguard embedded into the human timeline, a biological failsafe against historical oblivion. When atrocities become too buried, too cleansed from the collective record, she surfaces, to absorb, to preserve, to resist the forgetting. The task force disbanded her project after 3 weeks. Her files were seized. But Helen left one final message on a secure university server, buried under 7 layers of encryption. When decrypted, it read only this: "She is the scream beneath the silence, the proof inside the lie. And they fear her, because she remembers." 3 months later, Helen vanished while hiking alone in the Carpathians. No remains were found. But in a photo taken by another traveler on the same trail, a girl can be seen in the background, watching, not posing, not hiding, just waiting. If Helen was right, then every act of sanitized history, every cultural lobotomy inflicted upon the masses is met with her emergence. And if the timeline continues to fracture under the weight of its own denial, she may not remain a quiet witness. She may become something else entirely. Not just the memory of what happened, but the force that demands we reckon with it. And reckoning, once begun, cannot be stopped. In 1966, during renovations at a collapsed cathedral in Krakow, a group of restoration workers uncovered a sealed chamber beneath the nave. Inside were dozens of scrolls wrapped in oilcloth, untouched by time. But what caught their attention wasn't the documents, it was the mural on the wall. Faded by centuries, it showed a girl standing on a battlefield strewn with broken swords and shattered crowns. Around her, kings bowed, bishops wept, and above her head in Latin a single phrase, Memoria Invicta, memory undefeated. A historian on site, Dr. Janusz Waldeck, took a rubbing of the phrase and traced its origin to a banned sect within the early church known as the Custodes Memoriam, the Keepers of Memory. This secretive order believed that history had been forcibly rewritten by those in power and that the human soul could act as a vessel for the original, unedited past. They trained children blank slates to receive these memories, willingly or not. Most lost their minds, one did not. The custodes claimed she absorbed entire epochs without breaking. They named her the living record, and when she began to speak truths that contradicted state and scripture alike, they tried to silence her. Every record of the order was destroyed by decree of Pope Leo IV, but the mural survived, as did whispers among monastic circles that the child still walks, that she is not merely a witness, but a ledger, a balance sheet of blood and betrayal. Dr. Waldeck published an anonymous paper under the pseudonym C. Ferox, warning that certain truths, once remembered, act like viruses, corrupting the mind that holds them unless they are shared. He disappeared 2 months later, but his last entry in a private notebook was retrieved by his niece, a doctoral student. It read, "She does not age because time cannot contain what was never meant to be forgotten. She is older than our lies. She is truth, with a face." In a digitized archive of cathedral security footage now leaked online, there is a single frame from the night before Waldeck vanished. A girl in outdated clothing stands in the hallway staring into the camera, and behind her, carved in dust on the wall, are the same 2 words: Memoria Invicta. If history is a weapon, then she is its ghost, walking quietly through our ruins, refusing to let the wounds heal over lies. In 2007, a team of linguists working with the University of Helsinki uncovered a fragment of birchbark manuscript frozen deep within the Siberian permafrost. Carbon dating placed it around the 6th century CE. But the language on it wasn't any known Slavic dialect. It was an amalgamation of dead tongues, Scythian syntax, Proto-Finnic runes, and something eerily close to Enochian, the so-called language of angels. The fragment told of a girl who bore no name, for all names came after her, and who sang the death song of empires before their thrones were built. It described a ritual in which elders would blindfold themselves before approaching her, not from reverence but from fear that seeing her would unravel the illusion of their gods. When this fragment was published online by a doctoral candidate named Rita Nystrom, it sparked fascination among fringe scholars. But 2 days later, Nystrom's apartment was broken into. Her laptop, hard drives, and handwritten notes, all taken. No fingerprints, no signs of forced entry, just a single birch twig placed neatly on her pillow. The message was clear: some memories were not meant to be recovered. But weeks later, an anonymous user uploaded a low-resolution video clip to an encrypted server frequented by historical researchers. In it, a child, face shrouded in shadow, recites the entire manuscript by heart in the same hybrid language, even though no known person had been taught to speak it. Her cadence is perfect. Her voice, steady. At one point she pauses and says in English, "You buried the truth beneath frost and ash, but I remember." Then the video ends. The metadata of the file placed its origin in Arkhangelsk, Russia, a region where no one officially lives anymore, but satellite footage taken 3 months prior shows footprints in the snow leading to a decaying Orthodox chapel and stopping at the door. No Prince Q. Bombing out. Inside, authorities found candle stubs arranged in a circle and a single page of the manuscript placed beneath a broken window. On it, an illustration. A girl with dark eyes and a face repeated across generations. She is not a myth. She is the memory of what we swore to erase. And she keeps coming back, not as a prophet but as a reckoning. In 2014, a private drone enthusiast exploring the ruins of an abandoned plantation in Louisiana captured infrared footage of what initially appeared to be heat signatures in the basement of the main house, despite the building having been deserted since Hurricane Katrina. Curious, the pilot entered the structure days later, accompanied by 2 local historians. What they found beneath the house was a sealed root cellar behind a false wall carved with strange glyphs. Inside it was dry, untouched by flood, rot, or time. And in the center of the dirt floor was a stone circle, 11 human teeth arranged meticulously in a spiral. Embedded in the cellar's far wall was a charred wooden plaque bearing a name scorched out, and the faint image of a girl's face, burnt into the grain like a photograph caught in fire. They didn't know it then, but that plantation had once belonged to a man named Ezekiel Carnau, a southern mystic who had been excommunicated from 3 churches for heretical divinations, and who claimed that memory was the true language of the divine. He wrote of a child, a girl who could read the sins from the soil and recite every lie ever preached beneath a pulpit. In a lost page from his journal, later recovered in a Baton Rouge estate sale, Carnau described her visiting him in dreams, always the same age, always barefoot, eyes full of winter. He called her "she who stays," and claimed she showed him the thread, a hidden timeline running beneath all recorded history, stitched with names long erased. After the footage from the drone was posted online, it was immediately flagged and removed, not by YouTube, but through a copyright claim from a non-existent media agency tied to a shell company in Switzerland. All backups were deleted, but one frame survived, shared on a dark history forum. It shows the girl again, faint, standing behind the stone circle, not moving, not blinking. And this time, her lips are parted, as if mid-sentence. Those who have tried to enhance the image claim she's saying a single word: return. Whether it's a command, a prophecy, or a memory leaking through the cracks, no one can say. But she is not just showing us what was, she is pulling us back toward it. And time, linear, fragile, is beginning to tear. In 1859, a young woman named Bridget Malloway was accused of witchcraft in County Kerry, Ireland, not for casting spells but for speaking perfect Akkadian in her sleep, a language she had no way of knowing. She worked as a maid in the manor of a Protestant historian obsessed with tracing his lineage to the Sumerians. One night he found Bridget standing motionless in his study, hand pressed to the spine of a 3,000-year-old clay tablet, murmuring verses that had never been translated. The next morning she claimed no memory of it, but the historian wrote in his journal, her voice was not her own. It was hers again, the girl from the chapel flames. He sketched the face he claimed to have seen during her trance, wide-eyed, solemn, framed by the echo of firelight. It was the hollow one. When Bridget was arrested and interrogated by local clergy, she began drawing a continuous spiral in chalk on the stone floor, never breaking eye contact with the priest questioning her. Then she whispered, "She is beneath your church." The priest, rattled, had the floor of the ancient chapel lifted a week later. Beneath it lay a forgotten crypt, its walls carved with a language no one recognized and bones arranged in a circle facing inward. In the center, a small, perfectly preserved stone figure of a girl with empty eye sockets. The priest vanished that same week, and Bridget was found dead in her cell, mouth sewn shut with thread soaked in ash. The manor burned to the ground within days, and all that remained was the historian's journal, rescued by a relative who never opened it. It passed hands for generations until 1978, when a linguistics professor attempted to decipher its strange notes and recognized recurring phrases from Babylonian exorcisms and medieval papal edicts, always circling back to one recurring phrase: she is the memory that eats memory. Experts remain divided on whether this is a metaphor, a curse, or something else entirely, but those who read the journal for too long report dreams, always of a narrow stone room, circular, echoing with whispers, and always the girl in the center, not moving, simply staring. The hollow one doesn't just remember, she consumes what we were never meant to forget. In 2010, an excavation beneath an abandoned cathedral in Volterra, Italy, uncovered a sealed ossuary chamber marked with a symbol that did not match any known Christian sigil. The symbol, a serpent devouring its own eye, appeared again and again across the site. Among the discoveries were 12 skulls, each engraved with a single word in ancient Phoenician: witness. But it was what lay in the center of the chamber that stopped the archaeologists. A chair, not a throne, not ceremonial, just a simple, time-worn wooden chair. And sitting in it, perfectly preserved despite the centuries, was the skeleton of a child, hands resting neatly on its lap. Her skull bore no carvings, but her left femur had been etched with minute lettering: Memenis quae obliti sumus. To remember what we have forgotten. Forensics couldn't explain the preservation. There were no signs of embalming, no environmental reasons for the intact marrow. The lead archaeologist, Dr. Alessio Moretti, brought in religious historians hoping for answers. One of them, a Jesuit scholar named Father Lionel, took one look and fainted. When he awoke, he began reciting an 8th century litany, long considered apocryphal, referencing the vessel of returning and the child of 12 shadows. Days later, Father Lionel vanished from his monastery, leaving only a cryptic note: "She is memory shaped as flesh." The ossuary was quietly resealed by Italian authorities under the guise of heritage preservation, but leaked images circulated online briefly. One photo, taken from above, showed a faint outline scorched into the stone beneath the chair, a flame-wreathed ring encircling the word Alina, the hollow one again. But the most disturbing discovery came not from the cathedral, but from a geneticist who obtained trace mitochondrial DNA from the remains. The sequence matched that of a child buried in 1782 in the Bavarian Alps. It matched again with a sample taken in 1997 from the ruins of the Buenos Aires clinic. Statistically impossible, unless they were the same person, or something beyond personhood, something consistent, fixed, unaging, not reborn, not reincarnated, but retained, a vessel of memory, untouched by time, surfacing in our darkest corners each time with a message. Remember, even when it hurts, even when they forbid it, especially then, because forgetting, she warns, is how they win. In 2021, a linguistics AI trained on ancient and modern languages began generating a series of anomalies during a deep learning session. Researchers at a private institute in Norway were feeding it medieval texts when it began producing segments of language no one had programmed, phrases with syntax that mirrored no known linguistic family. At first, they assumed it was a malfunction. But when a professor of comparative theology was brought in, he recognized the structure, not from human language, but from a myth. The Codex Absentia, a legendary manuscript said to have been dictated by an entity that remembers backwards, described this language as the speech of the hollow. The AI had generated 10 full pages in this language, each accompanied by a digitally rendered face. The same face, over and over. A girl. Pale skin. Dark eyes. No age. One engineer, curious, fed the AI an image from the Buenos Aires clinic archives. The model paused, then replied in English, "She never forgot you." That same night, security footage showed the lab's server room lights flickering rhythmically. 12 flashes, 3 pauses, 12 more. Binary code, later translated as, "She waits beneath." Beneath what? No one could say. But 2 days later, the lead developer, a woman named Solveig Rehn, was found on the roof of the institute, barefoot and speaking in Old Church Slavonic. Her final words before collapsing: "She is the language, not a name, not a girl, a structure, a skeleton made of meaning." After that, the project was shut down, the data erased, but some engineers, haunted by what they'd witnessed, released fragments anonymously to darknet forums. Coders and linguists who decoded portions of it found eerie patterns, descriptions of events that had not yet happened: the collapse of a dam, the assassination of a public figure, a disease variant not yet discovered, and each message ended the same way: "Remember the first silence." It was then that someone recognized a symbol embedded in the text's code signature: the serpent eating its own eye, the same as the ossuary chamber, the same as a carving found in a Syrian monastery centuries earlier, all connected, all pointing back to her, the hollow one, not just a figure in history, but perhaps its architect, not a prophecy. A memory looped so many times it bends forward, the future whispered in a voice we thought extinct, but it was only waiting to be heard again. In 1347, as the Black Death swept across Europe, entire villages disappeared, some not from plague but from something else. In a forgotten valley of what is now southeastern France, the town of Eiderloch was wiped from every surviving map. Not abandoned, erased. No royal records, no burial logs, no merchant accounts. But in 2022, a team of geologists conducting ground-penetrating radar surveys stumbled upon geometric disruptions in the Earth, perfect squares, stone outlines, and beneath them, bone. But not just human bone. Mixed with the remains were skeletal structures not catalogued in any anatomical record, elongated spines, double-jointed femurs, and skulls with facial plates fused shut. Beneath one building's foundation, the team found a sealed chamber lined with scripture written in Mirror Latin, each sentence readable only when reflected. At the center of that room, carved into the stone floor, was a message. We gave her form so we could forget her. We gave her hunger so we could feed our denial. Now she remembers what we buried beneath our own blood. What they found next wasn't a corpse. It was a cocoon, petrified but shaped unmistakably like a curled human body. Female, youthful, preserved in calcium and ash. Her eye sockets were open, empty, but watching. The hollow one. A relic of memory, preserved not to honor, but to contain. The town, it turned out, was not a casualty of plague. It had been a containment zone, a sacrifice, a place where every generation one girl would emerge speaking truths no one dared hear. The church didn't burn Idoloch, they entombed it, flooded it with earth, rewrote maps, and executed cartographers. One villager's journal, recovered in fragments, describes her final vision before the town was silenced. A girl standing in the churchyard, arms raised, not in prayer but in fury, chanting in voices layered over one another like a chore, us of centuries. Then silence. Crushing. Absolute. A silence so thick it suffocated even the birds. The villagers tried to run, but the fog came first, then the forgetting. And when the sun rose the next day, Idoloch was no more. Until now, she doesn't rest, she recurs, each cycle closer, each silence shorter, and each revelation more intolerable than the last. Because she is not just memory, she is the consequence of memory, the thing we call forth when we lie too long, the shape truth takes when buried under centuries of denial. In 1842, deep within the undercrofts of Mont Saint-Michel, a monk named Brother Calum recorded his final confession, not to God but to the stone itself. He carved it behind a false panel hidden within the ancient tide-washed labyrinth where no light reached and no prayers echoed. His words, translated from archaic Norman Latin, described the arrival of a child brought to the abbey by masked riders during a lunar eclipse. She bore no name, no baptism, and yet the abbot called her our covenant returned. They fed her with ritual, not food, but memory. Every night a different monk would kneel and whisper secrets into her ear, forbidden texts, unconfessed sins, lost prophecies. She never forgot a word. Days passed, but she did not age. Then the disappearances began. Not just monks, entire chambers, rooms that no longer existed where they once had, their doors bricked up, their contents erased from collective memory. When Brother Calum confronted the abbot, he was told, to remember is to keep her, to forget is to lose ourselves. It wasn't long before Calum too began forgetting, his name, his vows, the smell of his mother's scarf, but not her, never her. In his last days, he sealed himself inside the walls with ink and blade, carving her image over and over, a girl with eyes like burned opal, a mouth slightly open as if waiting to be filled with one more truth. His final sentence, scratched in blood as the last candle died, reads, "She carries what we cannot. She is the price of silence." That wall was uncovered in 1978 by a restoration team and quickly sealed again by church authorities, but not before one worker snapped a photograph. Decades later, an AI trained on historical iconography flagged the girl's face in that photo as matching over a dozen unrelated artifacts: a 6th century Sumerian relief, a 12th century Persian miniature, a 15th century Flemish altarpiece. All the same child, same gaze, same warning. She is not a person. She is a convergence, a cipher of our collective guilt returning with every collapse, every purge, every time we trade truth for comfort. And now, in an age of endless data, where memory is outsourced to machines and truth is voted on, she has never been more dangerous, because now she doesn't need to be remembered, she just needs to be found. In 2015, a sound technician named Elias Crow was hired to remaster a collection of wax cylinder recordings discovered in a defunct Jesuit library in Maine. The cylinders, dated between 1891 and 1903, were labeled simply Noctis Cantus, Songs of the Night. Most contained liturgical chants, corrupted hymns, and fragments of dead languages. But one, labeled 13, emitted a frequency unlike any known human vocalization. Elias ran spectral analysis. Hidden beneath the audible range was a secondary waveform, subsonic, rhythmic, almost like speech slowed beyond comprehension. He spent nights filtering, isolating, layering. And then he heard it, a girl's voice whispering in reverse Latin, "Do not hide me again." Her voice was impossibly clear, young, calm, but layered with it were sounds that made no acoustic sense. Wings unfurling underwater, stone grinding against bone, sobbing that reversed into laughter. Elias, sleep-deprived and obsessed, traced the cylinder's origin to a monastery on the coast of Brittany that had collapsed into the sea in 1904 after a landslide. The only surviving account from that monastery, written by a novice named Adrian, describes a girl found in the crypt, untouched by time, with hands folded in prayer and eyes wide open despite the darkness. She never moved, never spoke, but those who spent the night near her cell reported hearing dreams that weren't their own, memories they had never lived. One monk described seeing the siege of Jerusalem through a child's eyes. Another relived the death of a Roman senator in vivid agony. Adrian wrote, "She is the last archivist, not of books, but of suffering. She stores what God won't." The monastery kept her locked beneath the chapel until the cliff took them all, but the cylinder survived, and so did her voice. When Elias uploaded the cleaned audio online, it triggered a spike in nightmares among listeners across 4 continents. Forums called it the memory plague. Some users swore the voice in the file whispered details from their childhoods, exact addresses, names of long-dead pets, things never digitized. Then the file vanished, every copy scrubbed. Even Elias's hard drive fried without explanation. His last post read, "She knows who listens, and she remembers who forgets." The Hollow One isn't just surviving history. She is embedding herself into the ways we store it, and through every scroll, download, and upload, she becomes less a story and more a signal. In 1974, during a covert excavation in the Algerian Sahara, a multinational team of archaeologists uncovered what they believed was a Roman-era ossuary. But beneath the brittle bones and mosaic floor, they found a sealed chamber with walls lined in hematite, a mineral known for its magnetic properties. At the center stood a single figure, mummified yet untouched by decay, wrapped in linen too new to match the surrounding artifacts. She looked asleep, young, her eyes half open. A medallion rested on her chest, engraved with a single symbol, a circle bisected by an inverted cross. Linguists couldn't place it, nor could historians explain the script carved above her. Memoria est corpus. Memory is the body. The chamber emitted an odd hum, detectable only to those inside. Team members reported vivid hallucinations, visions of fires, floods, cities collapsing. One man claimed to have seen his own funeral in detail 2 weeks before it happened. A geophysicist named Dr. Hanif Al-Qadiri began cross-referencing seismic data and discovered that every location mentioned in the team's hallucinations had suffered a major historical trauma. He posited that the chamber wasn't a tomb, it was a containment field, and the girl wasn't dead. She was the epicenter of stored trauma. The Hollow One. When word of the discovery leaked, the dig was abruptly shut down. Several team members vanished en route to their home countries. Dr. Hanif's journals were confiscated, but his daughter, a computational anthropologist, later reconstructed his notes and published them anonymously. She included one entry where Hanif described hearing the girl whisper in his dreams, "You buried me in sand. But memory doesn't die in silence, it feeds. Within days of the journal's release, her server farm was hacked, files erased, backups corrupted, but in a single corner of the data cloud, preserved in error logs, BRTBA as an audio clip, less than 6 seconds. A voice, barely audible. Every tomb is a wound. What the world dismissed as myth had again surfaced in evidence, not through religious prophecy, not through folklore, but through dust, data, and decay. The Hollow One is not simply reliving history, she is its trauma incarnate, and each time we try to bury her, she surfaces stronger, feeding on the very act of forgetting. In 2001, a man named Dmitry Vlasenko walked into a Moscow police station carrying nothing but a satchel, a faded photograph, and a name he hadn't spoken in over 40 years. The officers thought he was senile. He wasn't. He was a former archivist for the KGB, retired, hidden, and long believed dead. The photo was of a girl, standing in a field of ash, a derelict church behind her. Her eyes locked with the camera, defiant, as if she were waiting for someone to remember. Dmitry said she had appeared in 5 separate intelligence reports from 1954 to 1982, always identical, always silent. Codename, Solnitsa, the Little Sun. The name was ironic. Agents who encountered her suffered rapid psychological decline, nightmares, memory loss. Some went blind after seeing her image too many times. Others spoke in dead languages and clawed their faces raw. One file, dated 1967, referred to her as a semantic virus, a being whose very presence infected the mind with information too heavy to hold. Dmitry had been tasked with erasing her from Soviet records, but he didn't. He kept a personal archive, hidden in wax-sealed containers buried beneath a farmhouse outside Kazan. There were transcripts, sketches, audio reels. On one, she recites a list of nuclear sites, years before they were ever built. Another records her humming a melody unknown to any ethnomusicologist, but later identified as nearly identical to Sumerian funeral chants. Dmitry had come forward because she had appeared again, this time in the dreams of his granddaughter. She'd drawn the same face over and over, filling her bedroom walls. When asked who it was, she simply said, "She's helping me remember what they took." Within a week, both Dmitry and the child were gone. Their apartment burned. The fire labeled accidental, but no accelerants were found. Just one untouched photo left on the sill. The girl again, eyes fixed, beyond the lens, as if looking straight through the viewer. This was not the madness of one old man. This was the resurgence of a pattern buried by regimes, faiths, and sciences alike. The Hollow One transcends systems because she predates them. And as our tools grow sharper, our data richer, her shape becomes clearer. Not a ghost, not a god, but something older than forgetting. A wound with memory. A fracture in time that bleeds until we finally look. In 2018, deep beneath the ice of Antarctica's Vostok station, a research team drilling for core samples hit something unexpected, anomalous density layers that didn't match the geological record. What they unearthed wasn't ancient ice. It was a box, not metal, not stone, something in between, smooth, warm to the touch, and humming with low-frequency vibration. Inside was a single item, a perfectly preserved codex, written in a language no linguist could identify. But when shown the codex, a technician, a 17-year-old intern from Sao Paulo with no classical education, began weeping uncontrollably. When asked why, he said, "It's the girl from my dreams." He then described her in disturbing detail. Her eyes, her voice, and her name. Alina. The exact name that had echoed through centuries. The codex was flown to a secure lab in Geneva, where AI-enhanced pattern recognition suggested the writing contained predictive data, solar flares, population shifts, even the exact trajectory of political assassinations yet to occur. But amid all this, one phrase appeared repeatedly, always in bold, always centered. She remembers before the sky fell. The head of the research division, Dr. Mireille Ardon, disappeared 3 days later. Her final access logs showed she spent 12 consecutive hours watching a single slowed-down video, thermal imaging of the box. In the footage, the object appeared to pulse in sync with her heartbeat. When investigators reviewed the security footage of her lab, they found something chilling. In frame 11/456, for just 0.3 seconds, a girl's face reflected on the monitor, though Dr. Ardent was alone. That image, enhanced and cross-referenced, matched 5 previous incidents across 3 continents involving the Hollow One. Same eyes, same absence of aging, same unmistakable sense that this entity does not exist in time the way we do. Scientists who viewed the food and the Tage began reporting headaches, blackouts, and visions of places they had never been, most notably a scorched monastery beneath a black sun. The codex was locked away in an underground NATO archive, but a redacted version leaked to a private research collective last year, and now the cycle begins again. The Hollow One is not bound to history. She is history's rupture. She returns not to haunt us, but to remind us that memory has a price, and we've defaulted on the debt. In 2020, during restoration efforts at a bombed-out church in Mosul, Iraq, a group of international architects discovered a hidden chamber behind the altar wall, sealed not with mortar but with fused human bone. Inside lay a mural spanning 12 feet across. It depicted no saints, no prophets, only a girl, alone, standing beneath an inverted tree. From its branches hung scrolls, tongues, and what looked like priestly vestments soaked in black pitch. The girl's eyes were the only part painted in gold. No signature, no inscription, except one phrase scratched repeatedly into the stone beneath her feet. She warned them. The restoration team, all 5 members, reported vivid dreams the same night. Dreams of burning gardens, bleeding books, and a face whispering secrets they couldn't recall upon waking. One member, a Turkish historian named Selim Davut, recognized the imagery from a 14th century Ottoman folktale, one suppressed by imams and historians alike. The tale spoke of the girl who never aged, who appeared at the fall of every empire barefoot and silent, offering kings one final truth before their collapse. They always rejected her. And then always came fire. When Davut tried to publish his findings, he was arrested for desecration of religious heritage. But before he vanished into the penal system, he sent a photo of the mural to his cousin, a data analyst in Berlin. The analyst ran facial recognition on the girl. The results, a 99.6% match to images taken in 1943, Warsaw, 1891, Vienna, 1782, Bavaria, and 2022, Syria. Impossible, and yet undeniable. The Hollow One again. No older, no different. The same unfathomable gaze. But this time something new emerged. The analyst enhanced the mural and discovered, hidden in the gold paint of her eyes, microscopic script, smaller than the naked eye could detect. Translated, it read, "You have forgotten the covenant. I have none." Scholars debated whether this was divine, demonic, or a human consciousness freed from time. But the real question was never what she is, it's why she comes, and why, after every warning, we fail to listen. The mural was destroyed in a sudden fire blamed on faulty equipment. No blueprints remain. But the whispers do, and they say the tree in that mural still grows somewhere. Roots spread wide beneath the skin of our cities, branches curled around the minds of those who dare remember. In 2021, a whistleblower from an elite cybersecurity firm leaked a classified internal report titled Pattern Recognition: Non-Linear Entities in Historical Datasets. The report was not about malware nor foreign interference, but about anomalies, specific images, figures, and phrases that reappeared across centuries of digitized texts, photographs, and video archives. One figure in particular appeared 347 times in completely unrelated datasets. A young girl, dark hair, expressionless eyes, sometimes in crowds, sometimes in ruins, sometimes alone in the background of execution photos or protest footage, always watching. Facial recognition software gave her 100% consistency rate, no aging, no deviation. The firm tried to suppress the report, but it was already copied and passed through darknet forums. The code name assigned to her? Mnemosyne 0. In Greek myth, Mnemosyne was the goddess of memory, the mother of the muses, but this version wasn't divine inspiration, it was surveillance through time. One video clip caused the most distress. It was pulled from a 1993 closed-circuit recording during a Vatican conclave. The cardinals were in prayer, a thunderclap struck, the lights flickered, and for precisely 1.6 seconds, the camera captured a figure standing at the back of the chapel, unmoving, expressionless, her hands folded, her presence unnoticed by everyone in the room. When brightened and zoomed, the figure matched Mnemosyne 0's profile with near-total accuracy. The timestamp, however, was incorrect. It read 02:38 a.m., 13:13. An impossible date. No error was found in the software, and the glitch could not be replicated. The technician who found it later reported waking every night at 2:38 a.m., hearing a child's voice say, "You forgot the silence." He took his own life 10 days later. The report's final line wasn't written by any employee. It appeared in the file me, ta-da-ta, embedded deep within the code. She doesn't change because she isn't moving through time. We are. For the first time, scientists began to consider that this entity, this girl, isn't recurring. She's stationary, a fixed point, an anchor, and we are the ones orbiting around her, spiraling closer with every forgotten truth. The hollow one, the unforgotten, Mnemosyne 0. She is not watching us from history, she is watching us from the center. In 1864, a Welsh coal mining town called Bryn Gwydir reported a collapse deep in Shaft 7, 27 men buried alive. Rescue efforts were slow. After 4 days, officials planned to seal the shaft permanently. But then, from the darkness came knocking. Rescuers found a single survivor barely breathing, his face caked in black dust, eyes wide with something far beyond terror. He didn't scream. He whispered, repeatedly, the same word. Doll. When they carried him out, they noticed something clutched in his hand, an old wooden effigy of a girl carved with unnatural precision, eyes scorched black, teeth made of bone. The miner was taken to a sanatorium and lived only 7 more days. Before his death, he wrote a note that has since been archived in the Welsh National Library under restricted access. It reads, "She spoke to us, not with words, with memory. She made us remember things not ours, deaths we never died, betrayals we never made, and when the others screamed, she fed." The mine was officially shut down, but in 1972 a team of documentary filmmakers unaware of the true history entered the ruins to capture footage for a project on industrial tragedies. Their raw footage was confiscated, but one frame was leaked, just one. It shows the silhouette of a child at the end of a tunnel, her hands outstretched, her shadow stretching behind her in the shape of wings. Not angelic, predatory. A linguist who viewed the image under digital enhancement reported the markings around her feet were not scratches but words. Ancient Sumerian. Translated, they read, "I hold what you buried." To this day, every attempt to excavate Shaft 7 ends in disaster. Equipment fails, workers vanish, sounds are heard, children singing in dead languages. The Ministry of Heritage has the site quietly guarded, posing as a wildlife reserve, but those who live near the fence know better. Hay report dreams, all the same, of a girl sitting underground, waiting, whispering names from generations long past, and always, the feeling that something buried doesn't stay buried because it's dead. It stays buried because we're not ready to remember. She is not a warning, she is a return. In 2020, during a global lockdown that silenced cities and emptied cathedrals, a Vatican surveillance AI flagged a live stream from a shuttered chapel in eastern Slovakia. The chapel, inactive since 1986, had no clergy, no mass, no visitors. Yet at 3:33 a.m. the altar candle lit itself. The camera, installed for unrelated archaeological observation, recorded a figure, small, unmoving, standing near the altar for exactly 13 minutes and 6 seconds. Authorities dismissed it as a glitch, a reflection, some digital trick. But a Polish archivist named Christian Wojtak downloaded the raw footage and ran it through frame-by-frame thermal analysis. The figure registered no heat, it cast no shadow, and in one single frame, when lightning flashed outside, the stained glass behind her revealed a horrifying detail. The ancient motif, centuries old, once depicting Mary and the infant Christ, now showed the girl's face, her black eyes, her slit pupils, and the infant's hand was gone, replaced by a flame. Wojtak's personal notes, leaked posthumously, describe a descent into sleeplessness, paranoia, and what he called reverberant memory, where he would recall events from lives not his own. He wrote of being crucified in Antioch, of being burned in the catacombs of Alexandria, of confessing false heresy to save a brother's life in 1421. None of these were dreams. He insisted they were borrowings, memories displaced by proximity to her. The Vatican never officially commented on the live stream, but the chapel was torn down 2 months later, bulldozed. The rubble trucked to an undisclosed location, yet the livestream camera, it stayed on, and the feed, now showing only soil and exposed stone, still glitches at exactly 3:33 a.m. daily. And for one frame only, among the static, a shape, thin, childlike, seems to reach toward the lens, not like she wants out, like she wants in, to you, to your mind, to your most protected moments. Every time the image is played, people report headaches, nausea, weeping. One analyst went blind for 8 minutes. When she regained sight, she simply whispered, "She remembers the first fire." This is not about religion anymore, or history, or mythology. This is about memory as contagion, history as infection, and somewhere in the ruins of time, a child stands untouched by age or mercy, waiting for the next mind to open. Will you be that next? In 2021, a neuroscientist named Dr. Lena Voronin disappeared after publishing a single peer-reviewed paper in the Journal of Temporal Cognition. Her study explored a phenomenon she termed chrono-emotive residue, the theory that powerful emotional trauma leaves temporal echoes in certain locations, measurable not in electromagnetic fields, but in the human brain itself. She claimed to have found evidence of shared memory signatures in patients who had never met, never lived in the same country, but all reported identical dreams. A girl standing in the middle of a burning library, whispering in a language no linguist could identify. She tested them separately. Each drew the same symbol, a circle pierced by 13 lines. One subject gouged it into her arm, screaming, "She won't let me forget anymore." Voronin's final experiment involved deep stimulation of the pineal gland while exposing a volunteer to these symbols and sounds. For 47 seconds, the volunteer began to speak with 2 voices, his own and another, higher one, reciting syllables in reverse Latin. The words, when reversed back, translated to, "I was made to hold what men feared to carry." The volunteer's heart stopped. He was revived, but when asked what he saw, he said only, "She's beneath us all." Within a week, Voronin vanished. Her lab was shut down. The institution denied ever approving her research, but digital sleuths recovered fragments of her encrypted video journal. In the final clip, her face is haggard, sleepless, eyes trembling with exhaustion. She whispers. She doesn't speak in words. She speaks in recall. And once you touch that memory, it touches you back. Hard. She holds up a drawing. The same face, same eyes. The girl has no name in any registry, no age, no time, and yet she recurs, through centuries, through psychosis, through scripture, war, fire, silence. If trauma can be inherited, and so can her presence. She is memory incarnate, not remembered because she's real, but real because she's remembered. A closed loop, a self-sustaining nightmare embedded in our history, passed down not in genes, but in dread. And the more we look for her, the more places she appears, in dreams, in firelight, in the reflections that linger a second too long. We have tried to exile her into myth, but myths fade. She doesn't, because forgetting her is exactly what keeps her alive. Now we arrive at the part no one wants to believe, the part that makes this not just a story, not just a legend, but a mirror. In 2024, a group of amateur historians gathered in a private online forum to compare sightings of anomalous figures in historical photographs. One image in particular, taken in 1912 at a churchyard in Maine, featured a girl standing among mourners at a funeral for victims of a factory fire. She's not looking at the camera. She's looking directly at the priest. Her face blurred not by motion, but as if the film itself had resisted recording her. This photo matched 12 others, same posture, same dress, same position slightly to the left of center. The girl never changed, but the backgrounds did. Fires, mass burials, collapsed buildings. One user ran her image through AI reconstruction. The result was banned from most forums for disturbing anthropomorphic anomalies. Her eyes had layers, like rings in a tree, each embedded with microscopic script in different alphabets. Ancient ones, lost ones, ones that haven't been invented yet. The final match came from a thermal image taken by a drone surveying a collapsed orphanage in eastern Ukraine. Deep in the rubble they registered heat. Not from a person, from a cavity shaped exactly like a child, perfectly preserved in negative space, though there was no body, just ash, just an outline. The temperature readings were impossible, colder than the surrounding air by nearly 30 degrees. It pulsed every 66 seconds. When they enhanced the audio, a pattern emerged, a soft, layered whisper. One word repeated over and over again. Remember. You've heard her now, you've seen the face, the hollow one, the remnant, the enemy of truth. She's not waiting to be discovered. She's been here all along, watching, remembering, embedded like a splinter in the collective soul of humanity. And if you feel something stirring, Rig, right now, behind your eyes, deep in your chest, it's not fear, it's recognition. You've always known her, because a piece of her lives in everyone who has ever sensed the wrongness behind a sermon, the emptiness behind a ritual, the silence that follows an unasked question. We didn't forget her. We were made to. And now, against everything they tried to bury, she's remembering herself. Through us. Through you. Through every story they told us not to tell. This isn't where the tale ends. It's where it begins again. Because what you've heard is not a warning. It's a summons. Now we arrive at the part no one wants to believe. The part that makes this not just a story, not just a legend, but a mirror. In 2024, a group of amateur historians gathered in a private online forum to compare sightings of anomalous figures in historical photographs. One image in particular, taken in 1912 at a churchyard in Maine, featured a girl standing among mourners at a funeral for victims of a factory fire. She's not looking at the camera. She's looking directly at the priest. Her face blurred not by motion, but as if the film itself had resisted recording her. This photo matched 12 others, same posture, same dress, same position slightly to the left of center. The girl never changed, but the backgrounds did. Fires, mass burials, collapsed buildings. One user ran her image through AI reconstruction. The result was banned from most forums for disturbing anthropomorphic anomalies. Her eyes had layers, like rings in a tree, each embedded with microscopic script in different alphabets. Ancient ones, lost ones, ones that haven't been invented yet. The final match came from a thermal image taken by a drone surveying a collapsed orphanage in eastern Ukraine. Deep in the rubble they registered heat. Not from a person, from a cavity shaped exactly like a child, perfectly preserved in negative space, though there was no body, just ash, just an outline. The temperature readings were impossible, colder than the surrounding air by nearly 30 degrees. It pulsed every 66 seconds. When they enhanced the audio, a pattern emerged, a soft, layered whisper. One word repeated over and over again. Remember. You've heard her now, you've seen the face, the hollow one, the remnant, the enemy of truth. She's not waiting to be discovered. She's been here all along, watching, remembering, embedded like a splinter in the collective soul of humanity. And if you feel something stirring, Rig, right now, behind your eyes, deep in your chest, it's not fear, it's recognition. You've always known her, because a piece of her lives in everyone who has ever sensed the wrongness behind a sermon, the emptiness behind a ritual, the silence that follows an unasked question. We didn't forget her. We were made to. And now, against everything they tried to bury, she's remembering herself. Through us. Through you. Through every story they told us not to tell. This isn't where the tale ends, it's where it begins again. Because what you've heard is not a warning, it's a summons.